This is kind of it's a StarCube Labs brown bag presentation. They're meant to be more casual. It's kind of a shorter presentation. Also, hello, I'm Connor Brinkman. I also go by Clock on the forums, so I will try to keep this short and sweet. Before I get into it, just know that if you want to give a presentation on any subject, any method that helped your game, feel free to reach out. I can go ahead and help you get started with the PowerPoint presentation. We go ahead and pick a date. It's very off the cuff. This particular presentation is about networking games with Discord's SDK. I'm going to go ahead and kind of explain the Discord API, what it is, what it does for your game, what it does not do for your game, what you'll be looking at in terms of effort if you want to integrate it with your game, some of the pros and cons of this library versus other things, how I used it in a game prototype I made, and what I'd suggest to you if you did want to incorporate it. And then we'll just go ahead and open it to questions, further questions. But this is very casual, so if you want to go ahead and pop one open, just go ahead and unmute yourself. Otherwise, I'll just keep on trucking here. So what is the Discord Game SDK? Basically, the Discord Game SDK is a library that Discord distributes for you to interact with their APIs. And their APIs offer a lot of functionality. Basically, anything you would be doing in a Discord client is available for your game to make calls into. So this could be anywhere from sending messages on a user's account. It natively integrates with the user's client to send messages. You can check their friends list. You can even stream voices over the Discord server if you'd like. There's a lot to cover here. If you'd like to see more of what Discord has to offer, I would go check out the documentation. I'm not going to list all of them, just the things relevant to game networking. Specific to game networking, the things that you would care the most about for your game are matchmaking. If you want to create a lobby for other players to find, they offer peer-to-peer communication. So if you want to open a socket-like buffer to send bytes directly to another player, that's another thing Discord's game SDK can provide. And lastly, the rich presence. So if you don't want to directly deal with IP addresses or finding game servers to send the data to, what you can do is you can connect players to each other using Discord's rich presence and send invites based on usernames and update the user's status based on what they're doing in a game. What does this mean for your game? Sorry, things this does not mean for your game. Things you would have to build for your game that the Discord library does not provide. The Discord library does not provide game object management. The Unity component system that manages all the game objects, it would not handle anything of that nature. You would basically have to make sense of all the binary data coming from another peer. And you would have to decide what updates go to which game object yourself. Any kind of rollback or prediction would also have to be handled by you. Discord doesn't do any of that stuff. It's very hands-off. Binary serialization. How do you convert your game state into a binary format to send over the wire? That's another thing you would have to handle yourself. Bandwidth control. Basically anything you send out, Discord would just take it as is and send it out. You would have to decide how much data that is and then cut back if you need to. And then in that same vein, delta compression is a thing that you would need to do. Delta compression is basically sending an update of a game, being mindful of the previous update. So you're not sending a full serialization of the current game state. You're only sending a partial update. Discord game SDK does not handle any of that. So if you wanted to integrate it, what would that look like? So the steps are more or less set up a Discord developer account, download the DLLs, and if you wanted to test locally with 2 users, you would just kind of set up additional users and then duplicate a Unity game directory to run 2 instances of Unity. That's kind of a Unity specific hack. I don't know if I've already mentioned this, but the Discord game SDK is not opinionated, is not wired specifically to Unity. You could use it on any C# based gaming application. They also have C++ DLLs for other things. It's really not that much when you look at all of it. to get set up and running. So pros and cons, just looking at it, it's completely free to use as long as you sign their license. It's easy to use, like I just demonstrated. It's very few steps to get up and running. You can get started immediately. And there's very few users on the internet who are not using Discord currently. It's a very widely accepted voice over IP uh, peer-to-peer messaging app. So that's the pros. And then here's this huge list of cons. It's basically like Discord is proprietary. It's a complete black box. We have no idea what's going on in Discord's library. If you're trying to think of unit testing it or like debugging it, you might as well forget it. Because once it goes over the wire, it's just hands off at that point. It's corporate licensing that can change at any moment. It's not free and open source like other libraries would be. In my experiences, it's got very poor community support. So if you were looking to say, "Hey, this thing doesn't work," what's the deal? The developers will either throw their hands up and say, "We don't know either," or just have very slow response time, or sometimes you don't even get a response. So it's not very well supported at the moment. The connection is tied to Discord servers for better and worse. Whenever you're sending something over the wire, Discord basically acts like a proxy. And if Discord isn't available or down for some reason, you cannot send anything over the wire. You would have to use a backup service. And also in line with using Discord services to route your binary data, it's kind of got inconsistent performance, I've found. So if you send a bunch of packets at once, it can get backed up and just held in the ether indefinitely. And you just kind of have to wait it out. It might seem like I'm saying don't use this thing based on how many cons there are, but the pros really outweigh the cons, I think. It's hard to beat free. It's hard to beat free, and a lot of the alternatives are not that good. Like Steam's game SDK, you actually have to set up a corporation to use, and you have to set up a game app to get access to that. Um, and those are basically the major players. All right, I'm gonna keep moving here. So I'll look at a real quick case study for one of the game prototypes I worked on called Star Damage. It was a 9-month prototype, and it was basically how do I get started with FTL as a multiplayer first-person shooter was the elevator pitch. Players would interact in a shared ship environment. One player would host the server, and the other players would connect to that server host and send packets over Discord. All in all, I think it was pretty smooth given how ambitious of a prototype it was, but it did unearth a few of those drawbacks that I pointed out, like very little support with Discord. I did it basically with all the community. James Liu, for instance, helped a lot. Other people on the Discord also helped a lot. But for the most part, I was just going through it by myself. So, what would I suggest to you if you wanted to do something like my game prototype if you'd seen it? I would go ahead and suggest for any networking library or middleware, you go ahead and find out if you need multiplayer. Very first thing you do. If your game design cannot survive without multiplayer, you need to order everything in your code base, all your asset pipelines, your entire workflow. It needs to be multiplayer first. And that'll really help get all the pain out of the way to begin with. Later on, all those processes will be smooth sailing. Really, the biggest blocker there is networking. Um, I've seen projects do it in reverse, and it's a nightmare because now you are jury rigging all the code that you've written to serialize and network to clients and predict and all those other things. Roll back. It's just a mess. In line with that, organize your code to manage everything. You want to organize your code in such a way so that when you do receive a packet, how can you easily update all the game objects in an easy to manage way? Definitely unit test your netcode. You're going to write a lot of business logic for things like rollback to figure out, okay, so if I missed a packet or my game mispredicted something, how do I get all the game objects back? You're probably going to write something like a circular buffer and object pools to handle that code. And those are things that you can unit test. You can't unit test Discord directly, but you can test all the surrounding code. And that's a much better boundary to test. So I highly suggest unit testing that. Set up a debugger. Nothing, just because you're networking things doesn't mean that you can't use a debugger. It might back up the packets a little bit, but it's perfectly safe to use a debugger while you're networking things. Um, in my experience, the log files get written to very quickly if you're just debugging what the packets are saying when they get to a client or the server. So I would go ahead and say set up some kind of very robust logging tools. Unity's logging just it's spurious. It'll be like ticker tape, just all over the floor. And if you do have the luxury, I would go ahead and set up like an alternative networking solution, like sockets or some other kind of file system read that you can test the networking stuff. For all those reasons that I mentioned, Discord might be down, it might be acting up. This would also help with just unit testing and just adding a lot of stability before you involve Discord. So that's the whole presentation. If you had any questions now, you can go ahead and lodge them. I think that's about it.